Luke, I just found out something I'm very excited to tell you.
What? Tell me, Michael.
Do you know what is the worst Star Wars film ever made?
Yes, I do. Rise of Skywalker.
Well, you say that, but of course, one film which often gets ignored is the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Ah, yes.
What if I told you the people who brought us the Lego movie and Lego Batman and the Lego Ninjago movie and all that stuff are now releasing a Lego Star Wars movie titled, and I quote, the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special.
Wow, that is incredible. I mean, I can't wait, really. The first Lego Ninjago movie was such a success, and then you couple it with a Star Wars Holiday Special. I'm booking my ticket to the nearest cinemas right away, Michael.
And to be fair, this is literally, Disney, they threw out all of George Lucas's ideas for the sequels, and that went well, and now they are pretty much putting him on, well, let's just say he's not going to be very happy, because as we all know, he infamously tried to destroy every single copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I guess, to bring us full circle, is what a lot of people would like to do to The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes, now, I would love, actually, because obviously this is Spooktober, I would love to see a George Lucas horror movie where he goes around killing actors who have appeared in episodes 7, 8, and 9. I want to see that.
Well, he already killed Hayden Christensen's career.
Ah.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past, we give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are into the third week of Spooktober, where we look at horror films for Halloween. Of course, our theme for this month has been crazed killers or slasher film movies, and this week we are looking at another kind of classic, a little later on, but still a classic of the genre, which is Halloween. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Halloween?
Sure thing, Michael. Halloween is a holiday celebrated on the 31st of October every year in Western
Luke,
countries.
I can't believe you made this honest mistake. No, I didn't want us to review Halloween the holiday. Oh, I can't believe you've done this, Luke. No, I wanted us to review Halloween the film, directed by John Carpenter. Oh, no, we're going to have to cancel the podcast now.
Oh, my bad. I did all my research based on the holiday Halloween. Or, yeah, it's not really a holiday, I guess. Actually, when I was
We have fun here, folks.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I thought that we got a day off on Halloween. Like, we weren't...
I used to think that too. Like, you should. I mean, I always used to remember when I was a kid, for example, being really happy when Halloween was on a weekend or, a bank holiday, because I was like, yeah, this works. And, I mean, especially seeing as, we get bank holidays. Like, what, you get like some random bank holiday in May? Who gives a shit about May? I want a bank holiday on Halloween.
Yeah, it's Halloween. It's a great day. Definitely should be a bank holiday. But anyway, let's get into it. So Halloween is a 1978 American slasher film directed and scored by John Carpenter, co-written and produced by Deborah Hill, and starring Donald Pleasence and Jamie Lee Curtis in her film debut. Like I said, it was released in 1978 on October the 25th, just 6 days before Halloween in that year. So we're almost at the 42-year anniversary. Of course, there was a sequel released. Was it a couple of years ago or last year? I can't quite remember.
No, yeah. There was a reboot released by Rob Zombie, who's also a musician. So there we go.
Yes, an 11th installment, which serves as a direct sequel to the original film, retcons all previous sequels, was released in 2018. So that would be it. So, like I said, it was released on October the 25th, 1978. And, well, why are we doing this? Because it's not an anniversary, Michael, because it's 42 years. Normally I say, well, we're just past the 30th or 60th anniversary, but we're not. Obviously, we are in the 42nd year, so why are we doing this one in particular?
Well, I think basically because we've obviously looked at some... Psycho, of course, in particular, was one of the original slasher films, and yet I think during the late 70s and early 80s, you had some other classic slasher films. Obviously, there's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's Friday the 13th, and we did consider both of those films, but I think ultimately I decided that this film feels like a very pure slasher film. So I figured it would make sense to look at this film if we're going to be looking at so many other slasher films, even though it's not an anniversary. And of course, Friday the 13th would have been an anniversary, but I felt it just wasn't pure enough. This is a real, proper, bona fide slasher film. And I figured, if that's going to be kind of our theme, it makes sense to look at it.
Sure thing. So, can you guess then the budget for the original Halloween?
Low. That's my guess. I think the worst thing I could do is not go low enough, so I'm going to go for $1 million.
Or even lower than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
500,000?
Even lower than that.
$1.
We're talking $300,000 to $325,000.
Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah, you thought I was just going to say 325 then, didn't you?
I kind of did, actually. There was a moment where I really thought... Because you do get those strange films that are made on, like, a shoestring budget, and you're just like, wow, like, some guy funds it with their part-time job, and it just films it in their office. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, that's the budget, but how much did it rake in at the box office?
Well, pretty slick marketing by marketing it on Halloween. You know, it's much better than, of course, one of my favourite Christmas films, Daddy's Home, which was released in April. So, pretty silly move there. So, I'm going to say, also one of my favourite horror films, I think, because of how horrendously funny it is. I'm going to guess this film made a very good amount. That's kind of my theory, but I don't want to go too crazy, so I'm going to go for, relative to the budget, what would be a lot, which is, I guess, 15 million.
15 million, eh? Well.
Yes.
It's actually, you timed it by 4.
60 million?
Between 60 and 70 million. Yeah,
wow,
this was I believe they call it a massive success in the business.
Yes.
A very specific term there. But yeah, we talked about it with previous horror movies. They can often be cheap and just rake in the cash because they are quite simple movies to make. This more than most classic horror movies, I'd say. And if they're very scary and effective, then a load of people are going to see them. So there you have it. 300,000 budget, but yeah, it raked in 70 million. So Michael, let us now answer the question, did we like this movie? You go first.
Ooh, see, I'm in a weird situation. I think this film has a lot of, let's say, it's very stupid, and like 50% of it's in like a cliche way, a lot of it's in a cliche way. It is one of those films where you can't take it that seriously, and yet obviously there's a certain, I guess, charm to it. So overall, I don't want to say I loved it, but I almost feel like I'm going to have to kind of think throughout this review about whether or not I really like it, because I'm genuinely in two minds about it. What do you think?
Well, I have to say, it does the job. It's effective, and obviously it's not that amazing, like most of these classic horror movies we've been reviewing. Actually, you know what? The Shining is actually better than I think I realised at the time after watching all those videos about it. Which one of those videos I watched, a theory was that, right, you know, at the end of well, it wasn't kind of at the end of the review. We talked about the fact that there was this guy,
Native American stuff.
No, there was this guy in I said tiger costume blowing this old guy.
And I said dog costume,
and it was actually a bear. And I have an excuse because I'm colourblind.
It looks like we have no more credibility.
Well, I'm colourblind, so I thought the orange was brown. And to be fair, an orange and brown, they are quite similar shades. So there you have it. And ever since my Windows updated on my laptop, for some reason, I don't know why, but it appears that the colour is slightly brighter than it should be. Like, colours are slightly brighter than they should be.
Okay.
And
I might actually, I hate to turn this into a tech support podcast, but it might be worth checking out if you have what's called nightlight settings on your computer. Nightlight settings basically work to, I don't know if this would explain it, but they reduce the amount of blue light on your monitor, which is obviously, if you know, blue light is considered to be quite bad for your sleep, and nightlight settings do that. So it might be the case when you updated it, it automatically gave you these nightlight settings, which would make things, for example, appear more orange.
Yeah,
so
they make like purples
that would be an interesting
appear
theory.
pink.
Anyway, I like how I was able to distract from the fact that I mean, to be fair, like, a dog looks a lot like a bear. Let's be real here.
Well, anyway,
they've both got similar ears.
Anyway, we also said, and we were stupid because it's Stanley Kubrick. We also said there's no reason. It
didn't mean
weird.
anything.
Yeah, but it did mean something apparently, and it meant that.
Yeah, it meant bears are sexy.
Well, it meant that Jack was sexually assaulting his kid, Danny. That was the message. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, which was which is quite dark, probably the darkest thing in the movie. And yeah, we just feel like, it's something there. But yeah, it's Kubrick. So of course it wasn't just going to be a guy in a bear costume blowing at a random old guy. But anyway, let's move on back to Halloween. We've exposed how stupid we were concerning The Shining. And let's get on to nitpicks. So how many nitpicks do you have?
Well, I've got 2, and I've also got 1 lit pick.
I've got 1 of each.
Oh, okay, so I guess that means you go first.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I don't even know if the second one's a lit pick or not, but anyway. Why... Actually, this could be a plot hole, you know. This could be a plot hole, which we'll get onto later.
Okay,
but
so we...
I'm just going to say it anyway, because it's very nitpicky. So this lady, at the beginning of the movie, who's driving in the car with Dr. Loomis, why does she...
Oh, good name.
Yeah, great name. Why does she have her window open in a car in Illinois in October? when there's a fucking thunderstorm happening outside? Why is her window open?
I hadn't worked out the weather critique, but that brings a whole new dimension to it.
That was my obvious thing, but I was thinking, well, maybe it was hot. But I'm thinking, no, it's in Illinois, which is quite cold, in the autumn. It's not warm. And yeah, it's autumn, so why the hell is it open? There's no reason. And of course, the rain should make you shut it anyway. No excuses. Big nitpick. And of course, that fucks everything up. Allows Michael Myers to go back, get the car, go back to his hometown, from his hometown, and then start killing all the people. So if that window was closed, no deaths. It just goes to show, little things can matter.
Air conditioning saves lives.
The butterfly effect is important. Well, that's the thing. I don't even think it'd be hot, Michael.
It wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been.
Yeah,
hot.
It's not even hot.
Although to be fair, maybe she was feeling a bit hot because that doctor was pretty sexy.
Oh yeah. Anyway, my lit pick. I don't even know if it's a lit pick, but Jamie Lee Curtis. She just has a hell of a jaw on her. My God. And
wait, a lip pick. I like that as a lip pick because it implies you have some kind of weird fetish for prominent jaws.
That's the thing. I don't, but it's just incredibly impressive that somebody has a jaw like that. Just yeah. And to be fair, her friends also have quite distinct facial features as well. But her especially, it's like, my God, like that was chiseled out of rock. That's something that I had to put down because I was like, wow, first time I saw her, I was like, damn, that is some jaw there. Again, nothing, sexual about it. It's just, impressive. You don't usually see jaws like that. So there you have it, Michael. That's my lip pick.
I like that one. Okay, so my two nitpicks are one, the cop her dad. So there's this woman, I don't remember all their names, but frizzy-haired girl. Her dad is a cop, and they're smoking weed, and then they just throw the weed out the car as they approach her dad, who's a cop, who would apparently be very angry if he knew they were smoking weed, and he apparently can't smell the weed that they were just smoking in her car. And of course, anyone who's ever been around anyone who smoked weed knows that weed can stink up the place. Something fierce.
And give you panic attacks as well. But go on.
Yeah, and give you panic attacks, as well, So that's another concern with weed, but mostly the stinkiness anyway. But the second one is it's a bit mean, but I just thought, like, why would, like, you would think, I don't know whether or not he left her head on the steering wheel honking, because it's kind of like that honk was going on for a while, and you kind of think, Michael Myers, you're not that great at killing, but you're not very stealthy, are you? Just kind of leave their head. He could have just rested their head anywhere else, but instead she's got to lean her head right against the steering wheel to honk everywhere. Now, my lit pick is, of course, that they are watching the film that they're watching, the horror film they're watching, is The Thing. And The Thing is another film by John Carpenter, and it is a very, very good film by John Carpenter. Pretty much everyone agrees The Thing is a good film, and therefore I like the fact that in this film they watched The Thing, and I would genuinely believe that that has something to do with the fact that John Carpenter would later go on to remake The Thing into his, one of the classics of the creature feature genre. So that's my lit pick.
Okay, so there we have it. Those are the lit picks.
But tell me about the plot, Luke. I want to know about the plot. It's very sophisticated.
Yeah, so this is incredibly simple, really, isn't it? The plot tells... this is literally what it says on Wikipedia. The plot tells about a mental patient. I assume maybe...
Oh, wow. So apparently those Wikipedia editors are slacking off.
Yeah, maybe one of them got murdered by...
high standards, yeah.
Murdered by Michael Myers in the middle of their editing, hey? I don't know. So the plot tells about a mental patient who was committed to a sanitarium for murdering his teenage sister on Halloween night when he was 6 years old. 15 years later, he escapes and returns to his hometown, where he stalks a female babysitter.
How many times are you going to do that, Luke?
Just twice. When he stalks a female babysitter and her friends while under pursuit by his psychiatrist. So, there you have it. Filming took place in Southern California in 1978. So not Illinois, by the way. And yeah, this movie, of course, it is a famous slasher film, hence why we're doing it. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was an inspiration. And we will get into the many themes, and well, not many, I guess, just a couple that can be discussed in reference to this movie. And of course, we have to acknowledge that it spawned this movie, a film franchise comprising 11 films, which helped construct an extensive backstory for its antagonist, Michael Myers, sometimes narratively diverging entirely from previous installments.
Yeah.
Indeed. So a novelization has happened because of this, a video game, a comic book, and the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2006. So there you go. Now, Michael, let's get on to the actual plot. And, well,
Yes.
what can you say apart from it's very simple. This guy escapes, he kills people, and the doctor and the police chief try and look for him. And, that's it. What more can you say?
Yes, I have a few things to say. See, I do think I maintain, and we spoke about this beforehand, I maintain this film has a lot of, I want to say, entertaining stupidities. I don't know, I don't want to be mean, but I genuinely feel like this film is one of those films, you know, that kind of idea of when you're watching a horror film, that idea of you watch a horror film and you shout at the screen because the person in the film is doing something stupid. That, of course, you know, I guess you'd say cliche. I think it's parodied in scary movie films where, of course, you got the line, run, bitch, run! Which, of course, is, reference, that's what you want to shout in horror films. You know, you always want to shout like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Oh, you don't go in there. Classic thing. Everyone likes it when you do that really loud in the cinema. And I feel like this film is really the peak of that, personally. Like, there were so many moments where I just thought, what are you doing? And I would like to explore some of them with you, if that would be okay, Luke.
Are we already getting onto the plot holes then?
Yes, I would say plot holes. Because to be honest, I mean, like you say, we can talk about the plot, but it's just a matter of the plot is what it is. Like, some guy kills somebody, and we can kind of go through some of the plot as we do the plot holes, which I think will make sense. So, there's no point doing the plot and then going through the plot holes.
Sure thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to start off with one thing, and this is kind of, it could come under characters, come under anything. I put it under, the acting isn't very good at some points. I just figure that's worth mentioning. You get, and of course,
okay.
I'm being a bit mean because the child actors in particular was when it stuck out, which I know is a bit mean. And I have
Right, move on. Come on.
A few physical issues. Basically, just one. The main one is the guy gets stabbed with the knife, and the knife is apparently able to support his own body weight, even though you can very clearly see the knife is not. Like, generously, it's as far enough into his body to reach the other wall, but it's certainly not far enough to be supporting him. I also do have an issue with people instantly dying from being stabbed, but that's fine. Another thing that sticks out is Michael kills a full-grown man, a mechanic as it happens, off-screen, and I find that funny because Michael, in this film, he's not set up to be a particularly proficient killer. Like, he's able to kill some unarmed women. He is able to kill one guy at one point when he catches him, almost literally with his pants down. He gets the jump on somebody. But I do find it funny that probably his most technically impressive kill of this full-grown mechanic, mechanics pretty buff guys, is left off-screen. It's fine. I just think, come on, show us Michael being a bit competent. And on that note, I think Michael, I don't think he's that great, because something that you can't ignore is that for the first half of this film, easily more than the first half, actually, he's just trolling people. Like, he's just hanging around, just following
he's
people.
waiting, he's stalking them.
Yeah, but here's the thing, okay, you got to think, like, that's not a good strategy, because then at that point they're going to be scared of you, you got to worry about all that stuff. If I was a killer, I wouldn't just follow people around.
No, he needs to find out where they live, because he can only kill at night.
No, this is why...
No, I'm serious. He can only kill at night. Why do you think he waits? It was Halloween night. He has to wait. He's not trolling. He's doing it to follow them.
Does he kill? No, but here's the thing. Okay, this is why I feel like he's trolling them, because sometimes he makes his presence very known. Like, I think, okay, I get you, but I feel like if he's got to follow the people, he should kind of hide a bit more and not be as suspicious. Is my opinion.
He's fucked in the head. Maybe he thinks he's hiding, but he's not.
Well, that's my issue. See, I just feel like he's. I guess the issue
is
he doesn't seem like
intelligent.
He wouldn't. Yeah, but the problem is, it makes him less of a threat, is all I'm saying, because it's kind of like, you feel like you'd see this guy following you, but oh, that's a fucking weird guy. Okay. And then, he follows you like a couple of times, makes himself known too many times, and then you're like, okay, I'm
that's the point.
Really on the lookout.
He's meant to be scary. He's not just meant to randomly kill people. That'll be a shit movie then, wouldn't it?
The thing is, Luke, it's not that scary if you can see him, but he's like too obvious. And on a related note, actually, do you remember that scene where he's like stood by her washing line, and then the camera cuts to her.
Yeah, that's a nitpick.
And then it cuts back.
That's a
and he's just like, and what I find, well, I don't know if I'd count it as a nitpick, because what I just find funny about that is it's kind of like the way it's, because usually you get, and it is something you see in a lot of films where kind of a character will be there, and then the main character will look, a villain will be there, and then the main character will look away and look back and the villain's gone. And obviously, in that context, you often, people like to make jokes about, imagine if that person turned back and that person, they like literally just saw the person walking away. Because obviously it's kind of the funny thing about these horror films that are just about real human beings, when they disappear, and that basically what's happening is when the guys... when the person who's being stalked or whatever isn't looking, the guy's just running away, like, oh, I got her. And you just think that's really funny. But what I like about this one is that Michael Myers was like, stood there like, okay, look away. You gotta look away so I can run away. And it's like, she's not looking away. So just like, okay, and that's why I like to imagine just off screen, you just see him just running away. Like, okay, listen. Anyway, now, that's fine. So, overall, I think Michael Myers, I think
I've got one more
he's not as
plot
much of a
hole to
threat.
say about Michael Myers.
Okay, yeah, hit me with your plot hole about Michael Myers.
It's not a plot hole, I guess, more than just a bizarre thing. So, I don't know how, at the end of the movie, Michael Myers misses Jamie Lee Curtis with his stab.
Oh, yeah.
He cuts her shirt, and she's right below him. That is some god-awful hand-eye coordination then. And then it happens later on as well. He tries to stab her and completely misses her. I mean, come on, man. She's right there.
That's the thing. I do maintain he isn't a very competent killer. And personally, I mean,
he's not meant to be competent, but the question is, can you stab someone from 2 feet away and not miss them?
I mean, that's it. Yeah. So when let's be honest, competent is a bit, generous. I mean, sometimes he's competent. I mean, he does kill some people, but yeah, certainly he has his moments where maybe he's a little bit embarrassing with his hand-eye coordination, which is unfortunate. And I also will maintain, that I think sometimes, I guess this is it, he's too committed to the theatrics sometimes, because, obviously you said that, of course, you want your killer to be a bit scary. If you were going to be killed by someone, I assume you'd want them to stalk you for a bit, so you kind of feel some of the full weight. But I feel
it's just makes for an entertaining movie.
Yeah, my only concern is that I think it's a bit of a case of not quite all bark and no bite, but too much bark and not enough bite. Like, he spends a lot of time really kind of milking it.
That's the whole fucking movie,
He spends a lot of time milking it.
Well, then what the fuck are you doing? Then why are you watching this? If that's the whole point, I don't get it. Like, this is bizarre. And then he shows up. He's meant to milk it. That's the point of the movie. He's meant to milk it.
I feel like, you milk it because you've earned it. Or rather, you milk it because you're going to earn it. I'm
did
fine.
earn it. He killed 3 people.
Here's an example. Look, let me give you an example. Okay, so like Pennywise in It. Okay, he milks it a lot, but he's pretty. When he
that's
goes
different.
for it, he really brings
he feeds off children's fears. That's why he does it. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that's the thing. Like, I'm saying it's better that Pennywise does it because I'm kind of into it.
Okay, it's better. There's a reason, but you're advocating for an incredibly boring movie here.
No, because I think, you can still have scary things. I mean, there's plenty of horror films where people don't milk it, and it's very fine. I feel like basically they could have had him, and I'm saying the thing is, okay, he's allowed to milk it a bit. Like, that's, I think I want to clarify this. He's milking a bit, but I feel like some of the time when he's kind of really milking it by, basically, I'm going to say it's like trolling them. That is my belief. He is trolling them because he's, standing in front of them and like he's waiting by the hedge, and he's like, I'm going to stand here, and then when she walks towards you, I'm going to run away, trot off. Well, maybe if just one of those times when he's doing that, he decided to actually hide just to make sure, and we could still see things from his perspective. I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying he can't milk it at all. Luke. I'm just saying for what he's doing, I mean, considering, like you even admitted, he's not even capable of stabbing this woman when she's, as you said, 2 feet away from him. Let's have a bit of humility here. Let's have a bit of decorum.
Yeah, okay. Now, this is just an absolute bullshit accusation that you're throwing at the movie. Okay, Michael Myers shouldn't milk it as much. That's why the movie is so famous.
It's not called Milkle.
Yeah,
Myers,
you can be ironic all you like about this and make jokes, but that's the thing. You're advocating.
It's fine. Yeah, I know. I'm right.
You're advocating for a more boring movie. You've talked for a while, and this is my point.
Better movie. No, Luke, it's my turn. Yeah, okay, you can just explain to everyone how wrong I am for a bit, and then we'll move on.
Well, I mean, I think I've done that well enough, really. You're advocating for a movie, like I said, which is boring, and therefore you don't want Michael Myers to milk it. Well, then, if he didn't do that, then this movie would be forgotten, and we wouldn't be reviewing this to this day, and Halloween would not have inspired tens or dozens of slasher films in the 1980s, which it did, which we will get onto later, because of the very thing you are criticising this movie for.
I don't know, Luke. I think that you lack a creative mind to understand how they could have made an entertaining movie without them milking it, but it's fine. Anyway, so let's talk about I think, okay, you got to agree with me on this, okay? The authorities in this film who are trying to stop Myers are quite incompetent. So I've got, I guess, 4 examples, I think. So one, I think, and you've already kind of covered this, but I think it's worth talking about again. The way he escapes in its entirety is pretty stupid, and I would argue it feels kind of rushed when you consider the fact that
this I agree with, by the way.
It feels kind of rushed when you consider the fact that I maintain that if they would have spent a little more time on this issue, they wouldn't have had to have so many scenes of him, milking it. For example, just hypothetically speaking, just bring that down. But obviously, they show up, and first of all the convicts are walking around for no reason. I mean, like, obviously we know why. So obviously it's like they presumably the staff at the mental hospital have been killed and all the convicts have broken out. That's what we assume. We don't see that happen. It's all very strange. So all we see is them show up. There's loads of people walking around. So the guy's like, okay, let's drive up to the gate. Not like, okay, let's call the police because there's been a prison breakout and possibly a mass murder in this asylum, because, you have to ask, if there hasn't been a mass murder, where are all the staff at the hospital? And then he's just like, no, just drive up to the gate and then I'm going to get out of, and again, presumably this is one of those psychiatric hospitals where most of the people in there are to be considered dangerous. So he just walks out into the middle of nowhere and then, obviously, how stupid it is, apart from that speaks for itself. You've already gone through the fact she opens her window even though there's these crazy people around, and then obviously they somehow manage to just lose a car to this guy. And of course the weirdest thing is he's already escaped. Like, he's already outside of the hospital before they even show up. So really, it's not even an escape. It's just him stealing a car.
I agree with you. I think they could have done a much better job with that escape. You said it feels rushed, and it does feel rushed. That is exactly the correct word. And yeah, like I said before, with the window thing, what the fuck's going on there? Why isn't the window up? Yeah, it just feels really poorly done. And
does that? Just kind of, I know, like, I literally just saw the film, but that woman never reappears.
No, she doesn't.
Yeah, which is weird, because she's like, they set her up as, so it's kind of weird, like, why didn't he just, like, from a narrative perspective or from a filmmaking perspective, you'd think, like, why doesn't he just kill her? Because, he could have killed her, like, obviously from the perspective of, if he's got to steal the car, it's almost contrived that she happens to stumble out of the car and escape. And then you think, if you're going to have that, why not have her actually shot? It doesn't matter, but anyway, it just seems weird from a narrative perspective.
What next?
Next one, okay, so this is a kind of minor one, and one of the ones that could easily have been a nitpick, but the dad kind of doesn't acknowledge the fact that some people stealing knives and ropes is a threat. 'Cause he's like, oh yeah, they broke into the hardware store, stole some Halloween masks. Okay, that's fine. Stole some ropes. Okay, whatever. Stole some knives. So it's like, okay, these people have stolen Halloween masks and then taken weapons and a rope. And he's just like saying it as if it's like, oh, those kids.
This is America, Michael. Everyone has the constitutional right to at least 3 knives and a rope.
Yeah. No, yeah, but yeah, it was just like really weird that he's not like the police are like, oh yeah, some kids have stolen masks designed to be threatening and knives. And you could be like, oh, they're probably just going to use it to scare some people and it's fine. But like rope as well, I don't know. Anyway. And I also thought the reason for not alerting the town was really stupid. The psychiatrist, like, the police chief's like, oh, do you want to put out an alert that there's this escaped mental patient? Like, first of all, the entire state should be on alert. Like, what seems to have happened, according to this film, is that the entirety of the inmates in a mental asylum escaped. That's what the film sets up at the beginning. And you'd think, therefore, the state would be like, yeah, we've got it. This should be priority number 1. Like, imagine if just an entire prison worth of people escaped. That would be insane. Like, everyone would know about it. It would be everywhere. But okay, whatever. Anyway, so it's like, oh, do you want us to put out an alert in the town? And the guy's like, no, because then we'll get loads of false tips identifying him. That's pretty much what he says, which is, okay, technically, I mean, it's a reasonable thing to say, but in that case, why ever alert anyone to a criminal being around? Like, that logic could apply anywhere, and it just feels really contrived that he's like, don't tell everyone that there is a mass murderer who's literally living here, because it might mean that we get a few people misidentifying some other people. And it's like, surely that's better than your current situation where he's out there potentially trying to kill people because he's a murderer and you literally believe he's the devil who has no compassion for human life and nobody knows that he's like a threat. Which actually, I will say, okay, sorry to go back to it, but if they had have done that, then Michael Myers would be looking pretty stupid when he's out there showing off on the street and suddenly someone goes, oh, there was that alert about that guy. Maybe Michael Myers is omniscient and he knew that he wouldn't put out an alert. And this one's the last one about the way that other people in the town react, which is the fact that nobody reacts to her screaming for help is very silly. She gets out of the house and she's like outside someone's door and she's like screaming help. And you think, okay, first of all, if you heard that, like if she'd said, for example, help, there's a mass murderer chasing me, then okay, maybe you'd be like, oh, it's a prank. But if she's just screaming help, like a woman screaming help outside your house, you'd be like, well, maybe a friend of hers has been killed or is not breathing, has had a heart attack. Maybe, anything could have happened. You'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to go out there and check it out. The fact that no one pays attention. But I do think she's stupid because she tries one house and then I'm going to work backwards through these victims here. She tries one house and then she runs into her own house where she knows there's nobody there because she's got this
maybe she wanted
evil
to protect
guy chasing
the kids.
her. No, yeah, I do think, protecting the kids is fine, but I feel like if that is the case, she should open the door and be like, kids, come quick. And then the minute she gets in, she'd be like, okay, because she tells them to go upstairs. She goes in, she's like, okay, go upstairs. And you think like, okay, no, get them in, run out the back door or something. Just do something, because literally running away where you are the only person in the house with a mass murderer is just, pretty silly. And I do think there's kind of a logic to it, but then what there isn't a logic to, and to be fair, I will say her running into the house at the moment, I'm just like, screaming, because the smartest thing to do would be to try another house. She tries the one house where she's like, help out, they don't say anything. It's a fucking neighborhood. This isn't like one of those things where it's, there's one house it's not Texas, where there's one house every mile. There's a whole street full of people. Anyway, whatever. It's fine. And then this happens several times, but basically she kills him and then, or she doesn't know she's killed him. She thinks she's killed him and then she completely lets her guard down. And it's kind of like, it's sort of okay. I'm like, fine, okay, she thinks she's killed him. But I don't know, like it happens twice. So first of all, I think she stabs him with a knife, I think. And then she drops the knife and runs upstairs. And it's kind of like, okay, I mean, I sort of get it because she thinks he's dead, but she doesn't know for certain. And she drops the knife and it's kind of like, could you just at least keep the knife on you? And yeah, okay, fine. She's like, oh, he's dead. But I just think it costs nothing to be cautious. Okay, but fine. Okay, we say whatever. She didn't know. She then thinks she's killed him again, or incapacitated him, and she hasn't learned a lesson from last time. She's still straight up just like completely let her guard down, completely just chilling. And I'm just like, whatever. And I also like that the minute that, this one I found actually very funny. The minute that she's kind of thinks he's dead or dealt with, she says to the kids, go to the Mackenzies' house and tell them to call the police. And I find that really weird. Because that means that she apparently is very confident that going to the Mackenzies' house and telling them to call the police is a very effective strategy. So yeah, you go to the Mackenzies, it'll be fine. Call the police, no issue. So why doesn't she go to the okay, I get it. Maybe the Mackenzies are far enough away that she didn't want to leave the kids alone. But you kind of think like, I don't know, it's just a very weird line when you think like she literally went to some random people's house. And yet apparently she knew that these Mackenzies would always have her back, so I thought that was weird.
Okay, well, again, I have to qualify. You've been talking for a real while now, and I have to qualify. This is going on when, she's just seen 3 of her friends killed.
Yeah,
don't give me that. Yeah, I know. She's just seen 3 of her friends killed, and she's got to look after 2 kids as well. And yes, of course, it's a movie, and maybe you would react very well like a robot, but I thought, of course, this character is not a robot, so, she's probably going to make some
I have another
decisions.
one, actually, on that note. Basically, when she saw all of her friends dead, she should have jumped out the window immediately. Because this is my logic, and I know, like, personally, I like to spend a lot of time thinking, what if some crazy person came into the house right now? Or, what if, for example, there was a monster in the attic, and they just appeared in my room? And my immediate thought is, well, you jump out the window, because, at least you'll be outside then, you'll be safe. So I was thinking, she wasn't quick enough to react when she found out all her friends were dead. But I do admit that, yeah, sure, maybe she was having some emotional issues. Although I do think that her originally showing up to the house, and you have to bear in mind, okay, because you're talking about the context of all her friends are dead, and I accept that. But there is another context to this, which affects some of the other scenes in the film, which is she knows that she is being stalked. And okay, fine, Michael Myers is allowed to milk it. But at this point, she now knows she's being stalked. And the first issue I have this is that this isn't like a supernatural thing. Like in a film where the protagonist faces a supernatural threat, you can be like, oh, okay, this is, she of course she's going to doubt it. Like if you think maybe you've seen a ghost out the corner of your eye, she'll be like, oh, okay, it's nothing. But in this context, what's happening is she's being stalked by a man, which is something where I don't believe that there's any woman out there who would be like, oh, it must just be my imagination. I would assume that every single woman, at least in the 70s, and obviously ever since then, would be familiar with the idea of a man stalking them, and would be like, that's something I should take seriously as a threat, that this man is stalking me. And I like the scene where he's just hanging outside the school, staring in, and then the teacher's like, what are you doing? And, she could have, and I will admit, this isn't one of those things where I'm like, oh, she's such an idiot, why didn't she? But she could have been like, yeah, there's a creepy man staring at the school, because when you think about it, like that would be a very normal thing to say, because schools, generally speaking, pretty harsh on the whole. Creepy men hanging around outside.
No, this is the 1970s. No.
Yeah, see, that's the
and
thing.
it's
Yeah, maybe,
high
yeah,
school
okay, yeah, so
as well.
Inform me on the. I mean, and to be fair, actually, in this movie, a lot of the people do look a bit older than high school, so maybe creepy man is it's just considered like, oh, he must be a student here.
Yeah, there you have it. So I just want to add a couple of
kind
things
of happy with that one.
Plot holes before we move on.
Yes.
Okay, so. I don't know if you'd said this before, but Michael Myers walks up the stairs, at the end of the movie. No one hears him. I think that's a bit of a plot hole, because I know he's meant to be a stalker.
Oh, actually, sorry. Similar note, I just wanted to say, just related, and it happens throughout the film, people not noticing things like that they should notice out of the corner of their eyes. Like people not noticing a car following them and pulling up behind them. People not noticing, like at the beginning when the guy's in the kitchen, literally in the prologue, the guy's in the kitchen, and like Michael Myers is seen to be literally in the light based on where the camera's placed. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just going to say he's a stalker. But come on, like he's good at it, I know, but you should hear him walking up the stairs. He can't be that quiet. And my other plot hole,
it's not a ninja,
I guess. Dr. Loomis. So he's standing outside this house for about an hour or over an hour, and then he spots this car out of the corner of his eye, and I'm just wondering, how does he not see the car earlier if he recognizes that it's his car? So that was bizarre. Why it took him so long to just turn his head to the left and see that it was his car.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually.
Yeah, so it's just a couple of stupid things in that movie. But yeah, overall, I mean, obviously you have very much tried to critique everything because apparently you hate this movie. I have no idea why. But I think there are some legitimate things that you can say were bad, but not that bad. I think you're taking it to a level which it just doesn't apply to this movie. There is a stereotype about characters doing stupid things in horror movies, but there's not that much stupidity in this one, I have to say. Like I said, there was a few things that I found which were like, yeah, that's stupid, but overall, I didn't walk away from this movie thinking like, oh, everyone's stupid here in this town in Illinois. That's just not the case. But yeah.
Well, I'm done with all my my plot holes. So you actually did time that very well with the jumping in there, because the last ones I had, literally, I mean, you really did a good job, because the last ones I had were all to do with people not noticing things out of the corner of their eyes. So well done. Do you think this film is scary?
That is the next question. So I would say that the first kill Myers does is a bit shit. And again,
it's kind of goofy.
Yeah, it's scary, but it's ridiculous a bit. And yeah, I do think what really helps the scariness, the shot composition, is great. It just really captures the eeriness and the creepiness of suburbia. Very well does John Carpenter. And I'd say the killings overall aren't that scary. The one where he kills the guy with glasses, that is good. I like that. When she opens the door and finds all of them dead in the bedroom, I would say that's, again, some well-executed horror stuff.
I liked the bit where the guy just randomly swings into view.
Yeah.
And there are some kind of, I guess, more jump scary moments, which I think we were speaking with Psycho about, kind of the fact that the jump scare kind of wasn't really invented back in 60s.
Correct, yes.
And yeah, definitely this is when you kind of get the proto jump scare really jumping in there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't say that's scary, but it's still really well done. I mean, here's the thing, it's a classic horror movie. If you had not seen any of these scary concepts before, you might be scared. Or you probably would be, actually. And that's the thing, it's classic. And I've seen these concepts before, in other horror movies that have partially been inspired, no doubt about it, by Halloween. So therefore, is it really that scary? No, it can't really be that scary, but I will get into the aura afterwards and talk about the whole thing. I mentioned it before, but the eeriness of suburbia that Carpenter portrays well. But yeah, overall, the actual killings, the actual jump scare moments, not that good, but yeah, again, like these were the foundations for which jump scares that are really good. That did scare me before I watched this movie. This is where these foundations were built, I guess. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be too indulgent on this because I think I've been plenty enough of that recently. So I'm just going to say I also didn't find it scary, which I guess you can imagine from the fact. And for me, a big part of the lack of scariness is that I did think, well, I think this film, it does feel quite silly to me, and we kind of mentioned that already with some of the scenes feeling goofy. There are some bits which I think are quite effective, but yeah, overall not too scary. What's next?
Well, I was just going to talk overall, I guess, about the atmosphere or the aura of this movie, because here's the thing. Yes, the specific bits which are designed to scare you don't do it that well, but overall, I do love the fact that there is the atmosphere that is created by this movie tries to portray, I guess, I'm going to use that word again, an aura that there's just always something spooky about Halloween night. This movie tries to encapsulate that. I saw the boogeyman, I saw him outside when that kid said that. It's just classic spooky stuff that's meant to scare you. And it's really simple, not elaborate at all, because it's just a regular house in suburbia. That is what gives it, this scariness, I guess. It's just could happen anywhere, in small town America. I guess very, very different to The Shining in that regard, in the simplicity and where it happens. And of course, we have to talk about when talking about the atmosphere, the aura, the music helps so much. It's unbelievably good. And that is a trait we've noticed that we've seen in the last 3 movies we've reviewed, all classic horror movies, Psycho, The Shining, and now Halloween. The music being good is one of the best indicators for how good a horror movie is, and that really makes it good. And obviously, I do love I talked about the shot composition before, but yeah, Michael Myers coming out of the shadows, really nice. I think the technical stuff overall, considering how low the budget was all very impressive. So I do want to, again, it's not scary, but just the eeriness of it all, the aura of, this is Halloween night. This is this kind of thing that happens. That's great. I do like that a lot.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, John Carpenter is, I already mentioned, I think The Thing is really good. Of course, he did They Live, and he's obviously very talented, and I think you can see there is a lot of raw talent here in terms of the direction, in terms of, I guess, the commitment to the craft. And yeah, I would second your point on the music. I think it's a kind of classic soundtrack. You kind of recognize do 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 do. And yeah, it is creepy. And I also agree with you that it does. The Halloween night thing, I would say, it's kind of interesting because there's almost something a bit. There's almost a weird contrast, and I think many of the scenes feel quite nice and quaint, or kind of many of the environments presented feel quite nice and quaint. So, but then there's also that creepiness there at the same time. So when they're kind of just walking along, especially during the daytime, just walking along these nice suburban streets, I would argue there's not anything particularly scary presented there, and yet there is, I guess, kind of it's the juxtaposition. That's the word I was looking for, and I got it. I nailed it. Juxtaposition between what feels like a kind of mundane suburb environment, but then there is that creepiness which is associated with being Halloween. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. So now we'll talk about, I guess, the cliches and all the legacy that was created by this. Because you talked before about cliches, Michael, and you said it kind of disparagingly, but I'll say that...
cliches.
Yeah, I mean, not like that. In the context you said it, but that's the thing. Like, this movie is, I said before, a foundation for, jump scares and so on. And it really is a foundation for a lot more. Horror happening in small town America. I know that's been kind of done before as well, but this is, one of the key blocks in that. You've got this one house which is haunted, which none of the kids go to. Girl who is naked or almost naked getting killed by this crazed killer. And I'll go into Wikipedia a bit to talk about the legacy. So this is, again, from Wiki. Halloween is a widely influential film within the horror genre. It was largely responsible for the popularization of slasher films in the 1980s and helped develop the slasher genre. Halloween popularized many tropes that have become completely synonymous with the slasher genre. Halloween helped to popularize the final girl trope, the killing off of characters who are substance abusers or sexually promiscuous, and the use of a theme song for the killer. Carpenter also shot many scenes from the perspective of the killer in order to build tension. And like I said before, it's responsible for the new wave of horror that emerged during the 1980s. Due to its popularity, Halloween became a blueprint for success that many other horror films, such as Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, followed, and that Scream satirized. Scream was in 96, I think. The major themes present in Halloween also became common in slasher films it inspired. Pat Gill notes that in Halloween there is a theme of absentee parents, but films such as Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th feature the parents becoming directly responsible for the creation of the killer. There are slasher films, though, that predated Halloween, such as Silent Night, Bloody Night, and, of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which contained prominent elements of the slasher genre, involving a group of teenagers being murdered by a stranger, as well as having the final girl trope. Halloween, however, is considered by historians as being responsible for a new wave of horror films because it not only used these tropes, but also pioneered many others. Rockoff, who I assume is a film scholar of some sort, says it's difficult to overestimate the importance of Halloween, noting its pioneering use of the final girl character, subjective points of view shots, and holiday setting. Rockover considers the film the blueprint for all slashers, and the model against which all subsequent films are judged. So, yes, you watch this movie and you're like, oh, there's a lot of cliches that you've seen in other horror movies, but at the end of the day, that's because this movie inspired a lot of them. And it is, you notice that when you watch it, it's for the first time. It's like, I can see it's this influence in all these horror movies that I've watched since then that involve, slashes and thereafter. What do you think?
No, I think that is true. And to be fair, I would say that I don't think the cliches are, and I guess I think that I said this film is kind of, it feels, I guess, quintessential. And I think when I said while reviewing it, I think I said because it is the quintessential slasher. And I think I said the standard slasher, which is not as fancy of a term. And basically, I think that's kind of communicating the same point that, this film does have so much that sets up what you will see in later films. And I think to be honest, it's possibly one of the of the 4 films we are going to, and 3 of them have reviewed this month. This film is probably the most indispensable, and I don't think you could look at, and maybe at some point, for example, we'll return to the slasher genre and look at Friday the 13th, Scream, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all that stuff. And given that, I think this is one of the films we had to get out of the way early, because I don't think you can look at any subsequent slasher film without having this film in mind and having seen this film and have that film kind of as part of your cultural or pop culture knowledge.
No, that is the case for sure. So I think now we should move on to the themes of this movie, because it's not just a dumb slasher movie. There's actually some themes, not as complicated as The Shining last week, or indeed Psycho 2 weeks ago, but there are still.
Or indeed John Carpenter's other films like They Live.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So the first one. The film has been often cited as an allegory on the virtue of sexual purity and the danger of casual sex. Although Carpenter has explained this was not his intent, it has been suggested, this is Carpenter, that I was making some kind of moral statement. Believe me, I'm not. In Halloween, I viewed the characters as simply normal teenagers. Some feminist critics, according to historian Nicholas Rogers, have seen the slasher movies since Halloween as debasing women in a decisive as a manner as hardcore pornography. Critics, such as John Moore, state that female characters such as Laurie Strode survived not because of any good planning or their own resourcefulness, but sheer luck. Although she manages to repel the killer several times, in the end, she is rescued in Halloween and Halloween 2 only when Dr. Loomis arrives to shoot Myers. So, there we go. Other feminist scholars, such as Carol J. Clover, argue that despite the violence against women, Halloween and other slasher films turn women into heroines. In many pre-Halloween horror films, women are depicted as helpless victims and are not safe until they are rescued by a strong masculine hero. Despite the fact that Loomis saves Laurie, Clover asserts that Halloween initiates the role of the final girl, who ultimately triumphs in the end. She fights back against Myers and severely wounds him. Had Myers been a normal man, Strode's attacks would have killed him. Even Loomis, the male hero of the story, who shoots Michael repeatedly with a revolver, cannot kill him. Aviva Brithal argued that moments such as when Michael's face was temporarily revealed meant to give pleasure to the male viewer. Brithal further argues that these moments are masochist in nature and give pleasure to men because they are willingly submitting themselves to the women of the film. They submit themselves temporarily because it will make their return to authority even more powerful. Well, I don't know about that. I have to say, I don't know about that.
I mean, yeah, that's a weird one. I mean, I can kind of get the logic in some context. Like, I can understand that statement being applied to other films in other contexts. So the idea being, as far as I can tell, what she's saying there is there are films which satisfy, I guess you'd say, the male gaze, even though they portray women in positions of power. But I wouldn't argue this film is like that, because let's be honest, who sat there thinking like, oh man, I wish I was Michael Myers.
Yeah, I mean, she flicks the mask off, really, doesn't she? Like, I don't get
She's
that.
taking the mask off of patriarchy.
So that's...
Fuck it, mask off.
So this is the thing. So okay, we'll get more onto the premarital sex thing later. But firstly, on the feminist, critique on the feminist praise, is this movie pro-women? Is it anti-women? Does it portray women in a good light, or they're just lucky and a man needs to come and save her? What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, see, I don't know, because obviously it should be pointed out, I was pretty against how I did feel that Laurie did do lots of stupid things. And I mean, for example, you said that, she's upset because of the situation, although some might argue that's a bit, of kind of the hysterical thing. You feel like, for example, lots of men in lots of horror films find themselves confronted with things that should cause them to be afraid, that should cause them to act irrationally, and yet men tend not to as much. So I think you could make that as a legitimate issue.
Okay,
Yeah, I do think overall you could make the argument. You could definitely say she's not like empowering or anything like that. But at the same time, I think you could also argue that she does have a degree of competence. And I think, it's also the question of not necessarily how competent is she, but what kind of initiative does she take? And I think even if you could argue that she's not necessarily competent, in some situations, you could definitely, and to be fair, I've said lots of people are incompetent. I mean, when I was talking about the authorities and stuff, but I think what is commendable from a feminist perspective is the initiative she takes. So like, she, is running around. She goes over to investigate the situation at the house of her friend. She's runs back to protect the kids and stuff like that. And I do think that is, and she does assume kind of a position of authority. And I like that. Yeah. That's my opinion.
No, okay. Yeah, that's what I think. I don't think this movie is, I mean, she's the one that, again, Michael Myers can't die, apparently. He's indestructible. You know, he is immortal, and that is definitely the message of the movie, which is kind of weird. But anyway, so yeah, it's not that she's saved by the man, because you know she should have killed him. Like she sort of killed him twice. And yeah, it's just Loomis at the end who I don't know, scares him off. Maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, so there's that. Yeah, we'll move on to another major theme found in the film is the dangers of premarital sex. Clover believes that killers in slasher films are fueled by psychosexual fury, and that all killings are sexual in nature. That's true for some, and I would say kind of in this movie, maybe. But he does kill a man, obviously, as well, Michael Myers, so maybe he's bi, who knows. She reinforces this idea by saying that guns have no place in slasher films, and when examining the film I Spit on Your Grave, she notes, a hands-on killing answers a hands-on rape in a way that shooting, even a shooting preceded by a humiliation, does not. Yes, I guess it's true. You know, shooting is more impersonal. Equating sex with violence is important in Halloween and the slasher genre, according to Pat Gill, who made a note of this in her essay, The Monstrous Years, Teen Slasher Films and Family. She remarks that Laurie's friends think of babysitting jobs as opportunities to share drinks and beds with their boyfriends. One by one, they are killed by Michael Myers, an asylum escapee. Again, that just describes who he is, actually. It goes on from that. Also, Pat Gill sees Halloween as a critique of American social values. She remarks that parental figures are almost entirely absent throughout the film, noting that when Laurie's attacked by Michael while babysitting, no parents, either of the teenagers or the children left in their charge, call to check on their children or arrive to keen over them. Is that a phrase? Well, apparently it is.
Yeah, I guess.
So, basically, Michael, this movie is critiquing the fact that kids or teenagers, they're having too much sex, they're not mating until they're married, and parents aren't looking after them as much. They're just letting them be wild, do wild things, like have, you know, their boyfriends over, and, and it's going to end up getting them killed. What do you think? Do you think that well, John Carpenter said he's not trying to portray that, but, you know.
No, yeah, I mean, do I think it's I guess, yeah. As we established in modern film criticism, the author is dead, as the saying goes, so we don't have to pay attention to what John Carpenter thinks. Overall, I mean, I think, and I do think it should be said, for example, when I said this with, I can't remember what I said this for, actually. I think it was Stanley Kubrick, but basically the fact that you can grant that subconscious ideas that could be on the filmmaker's mind might make their way into their filmmaking, and therefore you can say, for example, not necessarily is John Carpenter trying to say a message about, I guess you'd say, sexual ethics, but for example, is that message kind of in there? And I think to an extent there's a degree of, one of the things which I definitely agree with is the claim that there is often a strong association between sex and murder in slasher films. Slasher films almost always involve, and I think it's almost instrumental to the genre, men killing women. And obviously, I'm not saying that men killing women is the same as men having sex with women, but of course, men and women having sex is a standard heteronormative pairing. And therefore, when it comes to sex. So I think that association is always going to be there. There is an aspect. I think there's also the fact that a lot of men who kill women in slasher films tend to be unhinged. You look at, I mean, that's the case with all of the films we've looked at so far. And I think obviously you could say that would be a association people have. I mean, you look at, this goes right back to things like Dracula and the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, this idea of these men who are in some sense crazy or weird, who have this kind of sexual attraction to women and often vice versa, and then they kill women. So I think that's not a cliche that started with the slasher film. I'd argue that's actually, the slasher film in that sense is a reimagining of a very early horror trope. And I would say it's probably, a similar thing. I mean, they say that Dracula was literally written with reference to the sexual anxieties of Victorian England. And to be honest, insofar as I think every single slasher film to an extent pays homage to Dracula by having the idea of this eligible bachelor killer murderer who kills women, I think, that's kind of the root cause. But overall, I don't think you need to read the film that way. And the other things about, all the parents being gone, and that's to do with, parents, I guess, not taking care of their children to make sure that they're not getting up to the hanky-panky. I don't know about that.
Well, I don't know, Michael. 2 years later, Reagan was elected president of the United States, instituting, I don't know whatever he called it. He called it something like cultural values or something, standing up for their cultural values. And this is what this movie was warning about, maybe. I don't know. Michael. Maybe you're right. Maybe, like you said, the author is dead, but intention does matter. And if Carpenter says specifically, no, I just wanted to make a movie about a bunch of teenagers who are being normal, and the fact that the one person doesn't get killed is the one who doesn't engage in this stuff. I mean, maybe it's just a plot device. Like, she has to look after the kids, therefore she's not alone. So,
but I mean, the other thing is, I guess you could say that 2 of the people who die because they're having sex, not from a moral perspective, but rather because if you're having sex, you are not going to be in a good position to defend yourself. Like, if I had to think of one moment where I'd want to kill someone, if they're on the toilet and if they're having sex, 2 great moments where...
What if they're asleep? Surely that's the easiest.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, or if they're asleep. Yeah. But, basically that idea of when somebody... It's when we kind of let our guard down, so that kind of makes sense. And I think it kind of goes to the idea of, as well, one thing that's scary is when you see people being attacked at their most vulnerable. So, maybe this film did to sex what Jaws did to the ocean and Psycho did for showers. But yeah, and the other aspect is, of course, that if you're interested in men, I think you can make an argument that you'd be less cautious of men and therefore potentially more liable to get attacked. Like, Laurie obviously does get, startled as at the minute that she kind of notices that Michael is following her. So, I can kind of see that aspect of it.
Yes, well...
But, so you don't necessarily have to make the moral association.
John Carpenter doesn't strike me as an evangelical Christian who wants to make the connection that premarital sex is violence. There's, people who have premarital sex in this movie, they die of violence, I don't think he wants to... He doesn't strike me as the guy that wants to make that point, like he says. But anyway.
Yeah, although he could make it from the perspective of, I think there are perspectives you can make that criticism from not necessarily an evangelical perspective. Obviously, you can make it from a feminist perspective, but again, we'll say that John Carpenter probably wasn't thinking that.
Yeah. Okay, so the dangers of suburbia is another major theme that runs throughout the film and the slasher genre at large. Pat Gill states that the slasher films seem to mock white flight to gated communities, in particular the attempts of parents to shield their children from the dangerous influences represented by the city. Halloween and slasher films generally represent the underside of suburbia. Myers was raised in a suburban household and he escaped the mental hospital. He returns to his hometown to kill again. Myers is a product of the suburban environment. Which is true, man. And I get, there is an eeriness about suburbia, the quietness of it. Of course, in the city, there's, hustle and bustle is the phrase. There's a lot of noise, a lot of cars. But in suburbia, it's all very quiet, very, very creepy, if it's portrayed right. And that is what this movie does. So yeah, it's taking this suburban environment and just flipping it on its head and, making it seem very scary. And there's also, of course, the scariness that, this could be any street in, America. The sheriff says, or the police chief, whatever he is, says, the families live here. We don't have this kind of thing around here, which is, a trope now that has been played out because, the scary thing is that it can happen. Well, the scariness comes from it happens when you're not expecting it. And, so that is a trope, I guess. And, it's a trope that works. What do you think, Michael? The dangers of suburbia. What do you think?
Yeah, I would see that. I think, and this isn't an insult, I'd see that less of a theme and more of a horror device, which I think is perfectly effective in the way that, it's... I think, obviously, the reason why horror films are popular is because there's a part of people that wants to be scared of things, and I guess you can make an argument that, as such, this film speaks to the kind of need. So I would actually argue, in a way, it's almost... in the way you described it, kind of acting as if it's, I assume you're kind of just, not necessarily your beliefs, but the way you were describing it from what you were reading, that this is as if it's like an attack on suburbia. But I would argue it's actually not necessarily an attack on suburbia. I'd argue it's feeding into a need that suburban people have, which is to feel that kind of excitement. So I would imagine, suburban people aren't watching this thinking like, oh man, what's he saying? Why is he talking shit about the suburbs? It's more thinking like, oh yeah, that would be exciting. And obviously, because people wouldn't really think that, like, oh, it's exciting. But that's how films work. Watch anything, oh, it's exciting. It wouldn't be in real life. I kind of think that's
I don't think he's making an attack on gated communities or suburbia or white flight, really. It's just like a twist. And like you said, horror movies are popular, and this one in particular, because it's like suburbia, oh, that could be my street. That could be where I live. And of course, I'm talking about white people here. And obviously, white people are the majority of people in America, especially back in the 1970s, a vast majority. That's why these movies are popular, man, because, white people who are comfortable in their suburban homes, they want to get scared. So, imagine suburbia. It's scary. Look at how unsafe it can be. You didn't expect that, did you? So, that is why, it's popular. This is why, this Halloween film, I guess, resonates and has lasted because of that. So anyway, we shall move on to Michael. And here's the thing we haven't really talked a lot about Michael Myers or his psychology, but it's very weird because he is evil. The doctor says he's evil. And It's just like that's it. He's just evil. He's just really bad. He is.
Yeah.
I mean, you said he milks it or whatever, which of course I disagree with. But leading on from that, it's like he is just there to just kill people and fuck things up. You know, it's a very simple villain. It's just like he wants to kill on Halloween. You know, he killed his sister when he was a kid. He's always been like this.
Yeah,
very uncomplicated, really.
It's kind of strange, obviously, because the one thing about it almost is when you look at him in the beginning, it almost seems like he's so young that you kind of get the impression it's almost like he's not evil. And the reason why I say he's not evil is because it's almost like it almost seems like it's not even conscious, which is kind of a weird situation. But I did find that interesting that obviously, he's setting up as evil. When I think about like an evil person, I kind of imagine more. Evil implies a clarity of intent that almost doesn't seem to be there. It seems more like Michael just kills people because, also I'm very good at not recognizing when people have the same name as me, but obviously every single time I am saying it, I am realizing that it sounds as if I'm talking about myself in the third person, which would already be pretty creepy. And then you add on top of that, like, can you just imagine, like, just isolated context, like my parents outside to me going, like, Michael needs to kill women. Michael needs to strangle them and watch them die. Anyway, because that's my name. I didn't think that difference
what I usually hear. But yeah, to be honest, that's the thing. It's kind of like the Terminator. That's what he feels like. Just
that's a really good
analogy. He just kills.
Because the Terminator's not evil.
No, he just kills people, and it's not necessarily evil. It's just he needs to kill people, and he's going to do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't say it about a leopard. You wouldn't be like, oh man, there's this man-eating leopard. Yeah. It's evil.
You can't, and that's the thing. When he's coming with you towards you with a knife, you couldn't like reason with him. You couldn't be rational about it. He's just going to kill you, and there is something, I guess, very scary about that. He's just a robot, and you can't stop it. And the only hope is to run away. That's that. And I don't necessarily agree that he's evil. But maybe that's what he represents instead. I don't know. But anyway, Carpenter himself dismisses the notion that Halloween is a morality play, regarding it as merely a horror film. According to Carpenter, critics completely missed the point. The one girl who is the most sexually uptight just keeps stabbing this guy with a long knife. She's the most sexually frustrated. She's the one that's killed him, not because she's a virgin, but because all that sexually repressed energy starts coming out. She uses all those phallic symbols on the guy. Well, there you go. That's a twist.
Went in. Yes, that's it. Suddenly, I feel like what that is he got tired of saying that it's not like to do with sex, and then it's just like, you know what, it is. Okay, guess what? She's just stabbing him with her dick.
Yeah,
getting some Freud in there, some penis
I guess, or it could just be that she's trying to kill him because she's scared. Like, I mean, that's what I thought. Like, she sees the knife, she stabs him not because she's sexually frustrated, because she wants to fucking kill this guy who's trying to kill her. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a weird one, Luke. Yeah, that's a real wrench in the works, because, I mean, what the hell's that about, you weirdo?
I like he starts it off by saying, the one girl who's at most sexually uptight just keeps stabbing this guy with a long knife. Yeah, but why does she do that? He says she just keeps stabbing them. Yeah, like there's this guy, this guy walking along the street, and this sexually frustrated girl comes out stabbing him. Said this is because nobody is having sex. It's completely different situation. Did not work like that in the film. So I don't know what Carpenter's doing there. That's just crazy. That feels
maybe he was feeling sexually frustrated. Maybe he was like, it was just maybe he was talking to a really sexy interviewer. And he was like, watch this film. She's like, she was really getting it. Ooh,
but that's the thing. It would work so much more the other way around. Like, the reason why Myers kills all the people who are having premarital sex, because the knife is a phallic symbol. So as Carpenter says. So he's like, you like sex, do you? We'll have this phallic symbol, like that. That kind of thing. But obviously, he said, no, that's not the theme.
Sorry, that out of context would be so funny. Just like, I was just imagining you on your wedding night or whatever, like, because obviously premarital sex is wrong. Oh, you like sex, huh? Have this phallic symbol.
That's what you think.
Okay, I love when you talk dirty to me.
If she's like if that's what he's saying about Jamie Lee Curtis, then surely it flips around then, and that's what then Michael Myers is doing to the girl. Therefore the knife is a phallic symbol, and therefore...
Yeah, because she doesn't stab him that many times. The stab ratio is strongly in his favour.
And therefore these teenagers are getting punished for not following conservative cultural traditions and having premarital sex. And therefore, we should elect Ronald Reagan as president in a couple of years' time to restore decency in America. But I don't know, man. I don't know. This is a very confusing bunch of themes, not in the same way it was last week with The Shining, where we disputed stuff, but it's because like it's all over the place. Like Carpenter is saying something very different to what most people are saying this film represents, but then if what he's saying is true, then it would follow that actually what the critics are saying would be true, because then the knife does represent a phallic symbol. So yeah, we're all over the shop here at the end, I think it's fair to say. Who knows, maybe it's just really...
Carpenter's a hack
maybe it's just
fraud.
a really classic horror movie. So, Michael, let's conclude. You go first.
Yeah, okay, so basically I said that I would kind of give some consideration to what I actually think of this film as we spoke about it, which I often do, to be honest, but that time I felt like saying in particular. I think this film, it to an extent, depends on what you want and what you expect. One of the things about this film which sticks out to me is that this film is in 79, which on the surface I'm kind of like, that's when I'm past the point of giving too much credit for originality, in a way, is the way I phrase it. But what I mean there is, for example, with lots of the films we did in the 60s, I have been grading on a bit of a curve where I thought, like, well, you know, for the time, this kind of point it feels like the point where there should be a lot more honesty to it. But then having said that, there are loads of cliches, which I think in other contexts would be criticized. And yet in this film, you kind of do have to say, well, you know, it's what the film is. And I don't really have a problem with that. You know, I don't really have a problem with the cliches. I think they're fine. And I do think that this film is a classic quintessential slasher film. Deserves some credit there. As for the themes, I don't really pay them much consideration. And, you know, I think on a technical level, it's all very good. The main question for me, I guess, is, in this film, I feel like it matters much more whether or not it's scary. And that's the kind of issue. Because I don't think there is that much there if this film isn't scary. And I do feel a bit like there's a risk with this film of you look through the facade and the veneer, and what you see is just not much happening, really, for the beginning. You know, like I can't think when the first kill happens, but it happens quite a way into it. And while obviously you can have an argument about, is it Michael Myers, you know, is it bad that Michael Myers is, you know, trolling them or whatever else? I think the real issue is whatever he's doing, it's not too exciting because it's just, you know, stood around watching them. And, you know, I think there is an argument from the perspective of realism. And I do think there are lots of other slasher films which do things more interestingly. And I do think, for example, one of the things this film could do is dole out the deaths on a bit more of a regular basis, or rather more kind of with better pacing. So you have like a death, which of course is what Scream does, for example. Scream, you get a death at the beginning, you get like deaths halfway through, and that way it's not just like you're watching some guy hang around for an hour and then he just starts going mental on everyone. I also think there are genuine issues with the fact that the decisions by the characters, it is kind of, and to me I do think it is classic stupid horror movie character stuff, which I think has been avoided in lots of the other films we've spoken about. I mean, there have been other films where I think, and I think it is in horror films, there is an extent to which the characters have to be stupid just to make it interesting. But I think obviously the mark for me of a great horror film is going beyond that. And overall, yeah, I do think, for me personally, the problem I have with this film is it's so close to a lot of other films which I think do more interesting things, and it's a bit unfair because I think many of the films that do more interesting things actually are taking direct inspiration from this. For example, I think Scream is actually a better film than this because I think Scream does more interesting stuff to the premise. I think this film, it's so bare bones that I don't know how much credit I can give it, which is weird, but it's like, you know, in some sense it's cool, but it's like so bare bones. It's so minimalist in a way that it's just a guy follows some people and stabs them. And yet, I don't know. So I think for me, what I'm kind of arriving at is going to be, it's either a low 6 or a high 5. And I think I'm going to say high 5. So just give me a high 5. And that's going to be above Notting Hill and below
the
Minority
disrespect,
Report.
Honestly. I mean, look, I know you've talked about the stupidity of the characters. Again, I don't think they were that more stupid than any other way. It's not something I'd harp on about, and it's not something that would affect my rating at all, really. I'll say it's overall...
Actually, sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing. One of the other reasons, in a way, because you say disrespect, and I appreciate that it does seem kind of, it is a classic, but there is one part of me, the one reason, is because I actually have seen quite a few other John Carpenter films, and I know that I really like his other films, which maybe sounds counterintuitive, but that's kind of almost another reason why I don't, because like, for example, with Hitchcock.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
Well, no, yeah, but like with Hitchcock, for example, I don't think any of his, I don't think any of his films are much better than Psycho, for example, and like with Romero and things like that. Whereas this film, I felt like, you know, John Carpenter, I know he does some very interesting films. By contrast, the main thing I'd say is, as we've both agreed, this film is very bare bones, and I think that's kind of, how do you feel about that? Is it interesting because it's minimalist, or is it, boring?
Okay.
So.
Well, anyway, I'll say it is a classic horror slasher movie, and I don't really mind that the characters are a bit dumb, because I don't think they're that much dumb to point it out. The themes, again, I think can be discarded. We went through them, but yeah, there's a lot of, well, maybe not, and then the director is just, I don't know, just doesn't seem like something to pay much attention to. Overall, on the scariness, it wasn't scary, but you've got to respect the scary concepts that originated, or partly originated, from this movie. But I do more than respect the aura that this movie created around the holiday of Halloween. I love the natural spookiness of that night, and I love that concept. And this movie really did do a good job of portraying that and enhancing that, I guess, because this is an influential movie in horror movies, or in Halloween culture, I guess, if there is such a thing as that. So yeah, I do like that. You gave it a high 5. I'm going to give this a 7. Again, I think you're being disrespectful, I have to say. Is it disrespecting a movie which, like I said, so much originated from in this genre? And yeah, you consider that the music is fantastic, and the creepiness of the suburbia. It's all the atmosphere created. Again, it's so good. It's so good. It's just you take out the music and the day, and it's just a kid or just a teenager walking along a normal suburban street, but adding that, it's Halloween, and adding the music, and suddenly it becomes spooky. And of course, being Spooktober, you gotta love it. So yeah, I am gonna, like I said, give this a 7. I was debating whether a 7.5 out of 10, but I give Psycho a 7, and I think they're on the same level. So that's Halloween done, Michael. What are we doing next week?
Well, next week we are doing the final slasher film, one that we've already mentioned as being inspired by this film, and that is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, A Nightmare on Elm Street will be our last Spooktober, or Spooktober movie. Thank you for watching and listening, everyone. We've been selecting and reflecting on Halloween. Join us next week for Nightmare on Elm Street. So have you, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.